So now we bring back round to naught, back round to there, and so on. No harm in going around and doing it again. Put a little bit of oil down the plug holes now as you're turning the engine over a bit. Doesn't do any harm. Okay, so that is the static timing done. Now, what I'm going to do now is we're going to put on the rocker covers and their gaskets, and I'm going to show you this now rather than later on because it's easy to show and there are a few basic rules and hints and tips. There we go. Right then, now we're here, we might as well look at putting on the rocker box covers. Here they are. They're the same left and right, it doesn't matter, they're not handed. It's got to be in good condition, straight, clean, genuine Volkswagen, and so on. Spring wants to be in good condition, not rusted here, and so on. Now, while we're talking about the spring, let's just get comfy a moment. There we are. Now look, this is the right way. There's the right way and the wrong way to fit the spring. If you fit it round the wrong way, it will fit, but there will be a leak. Now look, this looks sad, right? Do we agree that like that, that looks sad? Okay? Because if you get round the wrong way, it looks happy, and that is wrong. It wants to look sad. Okay, I think that's clear enough. Okay, so now we're going to fit the rocker cover gasket. Now you've cleaned inside here. I use a bit of thinners, make sure there's no fluffy bits left, like see. And then nice run of grease down the inside. Okay. Only grease, no goop, no silicone, no fancy sponge rubber everlasting gaskets. Cork standard Volkswagen kit, please. Right, here she goes, and it's a very precise fit, so take your time and wait until you can see a little band of grease all the way around, then you know you've got it in about right. So there we go. And now that's ready to offer up to the cylinder head. Paint's a bit soft, so we might try and soften it up a little bit. It hasn't really heated and cured on the thing. There we are. Okay, that is now ready to fit on the engine. And here we are, ready to put the rocker box on. Of course I've reached the wrong side. Never mind. It'll scratch the paint, but it'll be on and off a few times yet. Now look, all you've got to do is pop it on, and then just sit him down nicely. And there we are. Okay. One, two, three. There we go. See? On and off every time. So much easier. And what we're going to do now is we are going to replace the rear oil seal. Okay, Now, this has been taken off, but in the case of a real world one, this has probably not been taken off for 30 years or 40 years. Okay? Now, if you do break it, don't worry, the part is still available. Right? Now, I will show you how to get these off. The problem being that there is very little gap between the casing and the back of the part itself. In fact, you only have 2 millimeters to play with. Right? And what we do is, first of all, you tap out the threads, M8 standard, okay, before you do anything else. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put in 3, I'm going to call them sacrificial bolts. Right, don't use the ones for the turbine, don't mess about. Right, and then I'm going to wind them in, and then we're going to pack them in like that. You see, one there and one there, and so on. I'll show you that all set up. So now you have 1, 2, 3, 2 millimeter, and note, you see the metal, it covers the casing. You see, it's not sort of going to rinky dink. Okay, now if this hasn't been taken off for a long time, like this one hand, I would suggest that for safety's sake you do it to this side, okay, because it might go spong that way and pretty fast. Right, so this one has already been taken off, but we'll show you the demonstration of the principle. Right, now normally it comes off with a right bang, and it takes a lot more effort. Look, you can see with the bolts, the wind-in bolts have distorted the metal. That's how much force was involved, and as I say, it was quite easy for that to go ping right over there. So do it to one side. Okay. Right, so the seal should come out quite gently without making a fuss. Use something nice and roundy, and then as you can see, as it comes, live demonstration, and there we are. The somewhat battered seal. Well, here we are getting ready to replace the rear oil seal. We've pulled the old one out, it's all been cleaned up. And unfortunately, as you can see, in fact, even from the damage on the case on the outside, somebody has been in here and welted away at it, forced something down and pushed back against it. There's dents here and so on. So I'm going to have to try and smooth these out, and then we will use some compound, and hopefully the thing will be oil tight. Okay, I'll show you that in a minute. Yeah. Right. A little bit of compound on, and just push it up. It will just about hold in place. Hope it's on the cord. Make sure it looks nicely lined up. There we are. Then this is a 46mm socket, which I use because it's the outside is just the right side, and then as it starts to go in, make sure everything's nice and it's going in evenly. It's going a bit down on this side. That's the damaged side. Now, when you get to about there, you can now take the old seal and use it to help it drift in all the last of the way. I'll just wipe that off and carry on. So that now that I've gone as far as I want to with my 46mm drift, then Okay, that's caught on the edge of that, no matter my best efforts with that thing there. Never mind. Right, now you use the old oil seal, and then with another drift, you can then just drive it in all the way home. Whoops. I'll have to give that a couple of whacks. I'll come back to it. And then with a smaller, so 41mm socket, you can just feels pretty good. It's just under. There we are. Right, you've cleaned up this shaft. A little bit of grease, even copper grease, won't do any harm before you refit the support. So now that you've got the little plate on, dot of thread compound, I use compound crush washers, as the original appears to be missing. Hit that up, line everything up nicely. Pretty good like that. Right, and torque that to 30 Newton meters. Okay, right, that's it for now. And there you are. That's the turbine support now in place. Okay, it's been wound in, and we'll wait until we fit the turbine for the rest of that. Now, oh, by the way, when you're winding that down, you will need to lock the flywheel. Okay, so now that we've got that done, we can now move on to doing the same thing at the other end, changing the crankcase oil seal, plus doing what needs to be done on the flywheel and also on the axial play end float shims. We will do a check on that. And then if you hold the socket, you can do that, and then another 2.5 sort of turns, just till it stiffens up. I'd just like to see that lined up a tad more. There, I like that, like that. So, flywheel off. We're now going to remove the crankcase oil seal. It's a little bit different to the Beetle style of things because this is so much larger. Now, what you need is a tool like this, which is, as you can see, a locking key for a cheap angle grinder. And the advantage is that it just slots in, and then with no effort, live demonstration, there we go, with like no effort, there we go, and then you can just use my usual technique, and then you can use the Allen key head tool to remove the thing without gouging into anything. Right, so we're going to give that a clean up and an inspect. So that is the spacer rings removed, the crankcase oil seal removed, and you can see the needle bearing in here, which has to be cleaned and greased and so on. At least nobody's been in here before, or no savages. Here is the old ring. It was a genuine Victor Reitz. Here are the 3 end float or axial play shims, which need to be in good condition, not scratched and damaged, and so on. And then what we're going to do is we're going to prepare to do an end float test, in which you clean and put the rings back in place, but not yet the flywheel oil seal, the crankcase oil seal. But then you put the flywheel on, and then with the aid of a little device you check the axial play or end float. Okay, so we now have our 3 shims cleaned, and we remove the silicone seal from the flywheel. We can then put the shims back nice and clean. They just fit over, no more. Then we put the flywheel on, unlock it down. I'll set that up for you. Okay, so if you really need to check the end float, if you think it's moved, for example, if you've changed crankshafts or the case has been opened, what you do is you take 1 ring off, alright, put the flywheel back on, and then you can measure the axial play, and then you remove 1 millimeter from that, and that gives you the 0.1 of a millimeter from that rather, and that gives you the thickness. However, because this is just a top end rebuild, and because this is just keeping things simple, what we're going to do is we are not going to mess around. We're just going to refit the seal and fit the seal in the flywheel, clean and grease the roller bearing, and then we can see about tightening down the flywheel bolts. Right, so fitting the crankcase oil seal, little dab of silicone grease around the inside, doesn't do any harm. Make sure it all is right, and we're going to use the same principle. That is to say, we're going to get it started, and then we can use the old guide, the old seal, to finish the installation. So I'll get started with that. There we go. Check it's all nice and square. And then you can just use the old seal to drive everything home. And it should be just below the surface. So there's your crankcase oil seal installed. Now the flywheel oil seal, which goes in here. It's a bit strange because it's silicone and springy. Make sure it goes in. There we are. And then you can now offer up the flywheel and put in the bolts. So that's the flywheel popped on with the bolt new shim, and we just, for the moment, we just nip it up because it has to be torqued right down to a fair old amount, and we'll do that when it's sitting more on the bench. Okay, so that's that. Now once that's tightened up and on there, you're at just about where you would expect to get a short engine, you know, if you had an exchange engine. So I think I'm going to pretty much stop this video here because we have dealt with the build-up. This is overhauling the cylinder heads and pistons and barrels and all the rest of it. And then I could do another video which will deal with setting up the engine and getting it running. So then that's all for now, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. I hope you've enjoyed this little video and that it will help you in your eventual air-cooled bliss.